It's day 10 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look at what happened inside the courtroom. The court entered its second week of testimony, and Dawn Richard, a former member of Diddy's music groups Danity Kane and Dirty Money, took the stand. Now, Richard told jurors she witnessed Diddy's alleged violence toward his ex-partner, Cassandra Cassie Ventura, a number of times. She specifically recalled an incident from 2009 where she said Diddy allegedly hit Ventura with a skillet before beating and kicking her. Richard also said Diddy told her to keep quiet, saying, quote, people go missing when they talk. Now, Diddy's defense team pushed back on Richard's testimony, pointing to inconsistency in her accounts. Richard filed a civil suit against Diddy last year, alleging he assaulted, imprisoned, and threatened her. Let's break this all down with somebody who's been in the courthouse since day one, Lauren Conlon, podcaster and host of Pop Crime TV on YouTube. Now, Lauren, for the people who are not as familiar with who Dawn Richard is and her connection to Diddy, can you just give us a little bit of a background on Dawn Richard?
Sure. Don Richard was a member of the very popular group Danity Kane from Making the Band on MTV. And then later, when Danity Kane split, she and Kalina Harper, joined a band with Diddy, like a three-person band called Dirty Money.
And during making the band, correct me if I'm wrong, Diddy was pretty aggressive and tough, and you saw a little bit of anger coming out during that show, right?
Oh yeah, and look, at the time, we're all watching it. I remember watching it and thinking it was good TV. Like we're seeing the real deal here. And specifically, he would always get really angry at Aubrey O'Day because she always seemed to stand up for herself and stand up for the other girls. So you're right. I specifically remember seeing things get very, very heated.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. At the time you were thinking it's just good reality TV, but fast forward to now and you kind of seeing what was
Mhm.
going on behind the scenes over there.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it's kind of wild to look back and see a lot of this now that we're hearing what we're hearing inside the courtroom specifically.
I was just going to ask, how do you think Dawn did during her testimony today? And you were sitting in the courtroom, right?
Yes, yes, I was right there, and Dawn, look, Dawn has a very calm, quiet demeanor when she's on the stand, and she did beautifully during her direct, but during the cross-examination, I personally, my opinion was that the defense was able to elicit some just inconsistencies, specifically around an incident that she saw, that the skillet incident with Sean Combs and Cassie, where she had said last week during direct that Diddy hit Cassie in the head with a skillet, and after she didn't make his eggs fast enough, and they were at his LA home. And she was also with Kalina Harper, her bandmate at the time. And then she alleged that the next day, Diddy said to her and Kalina Harper at the studio or somewhere else that what you saw was passion, and people that tell, they go missing. And I'm paraphrasing, but this whole thing that if I go missing, or people go missing, they were saying, or the government was saying, yeah, this is like a death threat almost, basically, or they got Dawn to say this is a death threat. Now, when the defense came to cross-examine her, they pointed out that during all of her interviews with the government, and there was about 7 or 8 interviews, she never included the part about people will go missing or people will disappear until the very last interview. And then they went on to say, and this is also during I guess the redirect, she said that her memory has gotten better almost because she tried to suppress all of these bad memories at one time. So she wasn't thinking about them. And then working with the defense excuse me, working with the government had helped her kind of remember things. And I don't know what the jury was thinking. Me personally, I was like, well, my memory doesn't get better over time, but this is also somebody who suppressed a lot of trauma. So there's a lot, centered around that as well. They also pointed out something in her civil suit, that it was an incident where in the civil suit, she described Cassie being dragged out of a car by Diddy,
Right.
and he dragged her across the grass or something like that. And a lot of people saw, well, the defense was like, this never actually happened. And she said on the stand, no, it was a mistake by my lawyers. But then during the redirect, apparently she got confused about another violent incident. It just didn't involve a car or grass. So
Oh
I did
gosh.
feel like, yeah, by the end of her cross-examination, she admitted that her testimony has changed. She fully admitted it, also while providing context as to why. But yeah, in my opinion, I definitely thought that they were able to poke holes. And I would look over at the jury during a lot of this. And I'm not sure if the jury is becoming desensitized to a lot of the violence they're hearing, but man, they don't flinch.
What about Diddy? Did you see a glimpse of him? How was he reacting during Dawn's testimony?
So he was pretty stoic during Dawn's testimony. I did see some reaction during his assistant, his former assistant, excuse me, David James. David James had said, he was asked during an interview, why do you want to be a personal assistant? And he gave, an answer that you would give at an interview. And then he said, I also added the fact, I can't stop, won't stop. And he said, Mr. Combs kind of nodded his head. And then I looked over in the courtroom and Diddy was like, like, it was just kind of just, I mean, it doesn't matter to the case, but I did kind of notice that. And, he's really communicating with his lawyers throughout the day. He's flipping them notes. He's whispering to them. He's looking over to see what Tenny Garagos is writing on her legal pad. Yeah, overall, he seems to be in good spirits. And today, none of his family was present. I don't know how often we're going to see them, if we're only going to see them for certain witnesses, but no family today.
Okay. I also want to talk a little bit about Aubrey O'Day. You brought her up. She's also another member of Danity Kane. Over the weekend, she said she is not testifying as of now, not testifying in the federal criminal trial. And, a lot of people thought she would definitely testify, given that she's been such a vocal critic of him over the years. Were you surprised to hear that?
I wasn't personally surprised. I mean, she didn't file a lawsuit. I think a lot of these witnesses either worked for him directly or have filed a lawsuit at some point. And yes, Aubrey worked for him directly, but it's interesting because the defense brought something up this morning before the jury came in, kind of saying like a lot of these witnesses, this is turning into, a trial by gossip. And I'm paraphrasing. And, they're arguing that some of these witnesses, they don't know how the witnesses match the indictment per se. So maybe that's why Aubrey, was never subpoenaed. She was never meant to testify. And that could be because she experienced things, and she just was never, I guess, she never decided to go to a lawyer about it or to the police about it. And perhaps that's why. But yeah, I think I was a little surprised, I guess. But I think, it makes sense now hearing what I've heard in the courtroom and then hearing Aubrey tell us herself via social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lauren. Really, really appreciate your vantage point. Had a great vantage point today and love having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.